right, let's get at it, guys. This is Howl at the Moon, where we talk to artists in all spectrum of genres. And today we have Giant Walker. We have Jamie and Steff of Giant Walker. I believe guitars and vocals, correct?
Yeah.
Welcome.
Indeed.
First of all.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, man. Appreciate your time.
So let's start off. I actually know that the band was not called Giant Walker before. You guys used to be a different band. I've listened to those singles and those songs. But now it's kind of coming out of the pandemic with a change. You guys are now called Giant Walker, but before we're called Zero. Talk to me about that whole process.
Yeah, it's so you did your research on the old stuff.
We weren't prepared.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, so we had been playing as Zero, myself and Jamie, since 2012. So wow. Quite a long time. And when we first started it, we were 16.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Nice.
quite a long time ago. And we had a different bass player and drummer originally. And then we moved down south to go to uni and continued the project, but got a different bass player. And then the year after got a different drummer, and kind of what we should have really done is when we got Alex on board, our drummer now, we should have changed the name then, because it was very much a different project from when it started off. But I think at the time we kind of just knew how much of a nightmare it was going to be to change our name, and we were just like, oh, it'll be fine, like don't, like it'll be cool.
And then you realise that there's about 70 other bands with exactly the same name, including an accountancy company.
Yeah.
And yeah, you just
Surprise.
yeah, I know. And it was, I mean, we kind of had it coming because again we came up with it just so quickly in college.
Yeah.
And
Right.
It just, for some reason, took me forever to realise, hang on, like, this isn't really our band. It never felt like our band. It felt like we were just playing under the guise of a name that we came up with when we were 15. So it just felt a bit lame after, like,
After so long.
so much time. And then,
Yeah.
obviously, the pandemic was the perfect opportunity just to go, you know what, like, in momentum's kind of stagnated a bit. Let's just do it, because...
Yeah, I
If
think,
you can't be comfortable releasing stuff under a name and look that you're completely happy with, then it's never going to seem genuine or like it. You can always tell when someone's not comfortable, like in a set of clothes or in a under a name or whatever. So.
yeah, it was kind of like we'd obviously discussed it before when Alex first joined, and just kind of decided that it was going to be too much of a hassle. And then basically we'd kind of hidden ourselves away, obviously through lockdown, and got together a load of songs. And I just kind of was like, how would you guys feel about like changing the name and like just kind of starting all these new songs like afresh? And
Well, the other thing was we also asked, like, we were like, do these songs sound like the name?
yeah,
And
That's fair.
for the most part, it was like, not really. Like,
doesn't
I
quite
always thought
represent-
Zero with an X, at least, felt a bit, it had like a bit of a metal-y kind of harsh edge to it because of the X, I think. Like, just because the letter X looks pretty extreme. So...
It is,
maybe that was
it is a
something to
funny
do with
thing as well, because I think like one of the things that we found when we're trying to come up with new names is like, it's, first of all, it's pretty hard to come up with a name to start off with, but like obviously coming up to a name like to songs was quite
The
hard.
truest statement. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's certain type of people, right, that are really good with names, and we're just like not.
Nah, we're rubbish.
We're not them. So it took us quite a long time, and it kind of got to the point where we'd do like a weekly Zoom meeting, like on a Sunday night, like everyone would bring their name suggestions. And we definitely had a few meetings where we were just like, shall we just leave it? Like, is this going to be a good idea?
Is it that bad?
Yeah. But then, yeah, it was actually Jordan, our bass player, who came up with Giant Walker. And it was definitely one of those things where like some of us were on board and some of us weren't 100%. And then I think it just grew on us, like the more that we sat with it and kind of felt like it did actually kind
I
of.
think it's a good sign if the more you sit on it, the more you end up liking it, rather than the other way around. It happened the majority of the names. It's like the more you sit on it, it was just like,
That's like getting a
not too sure.
tattoo.
Yeah.
Think about it for a month, see if you still want it after that month, and go get it.
Sure.
Is there any
Totally.
meaning behind this new name for maybe folks if they're curious to know?
So, I mean, I think Jordan's inspiration was basically he was like looking at a load of like kind of like mythology and stuff.
I was actually looking at the mythology, but I was looking at like, I don't know whether you have heard of like, I was thinking of like the Jabberwocky and stuff like that, like creatures.
We've heard of that, yeah.
Yeah.
Like the Jabberwocky or like the, like just mythical creatures that you could, I don't know, just finding cool ones. And there was a couple like the Tantrabobus and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like just weird monsters and stuff. And then Jordan kind of took the idea and ended up running with it. And he, as you were saying, he kind of imagined, he had this imagery in his head of like a little girl like walking a giant, like on a leash or something, like that imagery, like a tiny little girl like walking a giant with like a lead, as you would walk a dog. And that's where he came up with Giant Walker from.
Nice. I like
That's
that.
awesome.
We always love to learn, even if it's like the stupidest reason. Like we always love to learn like the origin of the name.
Yeah.
Because like you said before with the other name, like sometimes it's just like, let's just call ourselves this and go. Like we just want to play our music and go. That's cool. Tell us a little bit about this new single just released last week, October 15th, under the moniker Giant Walker. It's called The Fact and Fiction, and you can listen to it now. To me, stylistically, it's not entirely different from the past work that you've done under the other name, but there is a little bit of a difference, and talk a little bit about that.
I mean, I think from like a songwriting perspective, one of the things that was quite different this time around is obviously with the lockdown, like previously what we would do is like get together and just jam something out in a room, whereas obviously that wasn't possible this time around. So we're pretty lucky to have a bit of a kind of a little studio set up, and so this time around it was pretty much a case of like Jamie like getting the bare bones of the song down like on Logic, and then I would just come along, hit record, sing whatever came out, and then kind of branch from there. So I think that was obviously a very different way than what we've done before, as we'd obviously like previously be in like a rehearsal room, as I said, just kind of jamming it out and kind of getting a vibe from there. I think also what's quite interesting is it kind of gives you an idea from the off of like what it's actually going to sound like recorded. So there was a lot of things that we kind of thought about more, like layers and things like that, which we obviously when you've only got like 3 instruments and a voice in a room, it's kind of a different approach.
Definitely. Like you were saying, it kind of sounded a bit like the old stuff. But slightly different. It's kind of like, because I think that the approach is what kind of made the difference, is because obviously, like Steff says, if we're in a room, there's one guitar part going on, and it's not like the recorded versions have more than one guitar part going on per se, but we never really thought about, it was always, how does it sound live first, and then how do we make it translate in the studio? Whereas this time it was completely flipped. It was like, all right, we need to make this sound as good as we can, like recorded, and then flip it and be like, oh, how am I going to translate this into like one guitar part that runs all the way through? And I think we much prefer the way we've did it this time round, to be honest. I think we're much happier with the actual songs that we ended up with, because there was no compromise, because it was done on Logic, where there's infinite resources, infinite tracks, infinite whatever. So it was just like, get the idea down and then
being able to hear it back as well, I think, is obviously very much invaluable, especially when it comes to like I think from a kind of melody point of view, like quite often if we'd be rehearsing like in a recording studio, in a rehearsal room, what I'd find is like we'd be playing through like say the chorus part, whatever, I'd be having some melodies in my head and I'd be kind of jamming something out over the top of it. But then obviously you might go home and then come back the following week and you're like, oh, I had this kind of idea, but now I've kind of forgotten what it was like, and I might do a recording at the end, but then it maybe wasn't the same as the original one. So it was quite interesting for me is like being able to listen from the very first, like literally like hit record and listen to it for the first time and just see what comes out, to like the finished melody, and like how it's obviously kind of gone from there. Which was quite an interesting process. And then obviously on top of that, the recording process was was quite different. It's the first time that we've actually kind of gone into a studio start to finish and kind of
got a producer on board.
Yeah, and had someone that really kind of had our vision in mind, I think. So yeah, that definitely made a massive difference as well.
I think that's pretty awesome. Yeah.
It's interesting, like as you guys are kind of like divulging the new recording process and then kind of circling back to the name, like when I first read it, my first thought was that because like you were coming off of Zero into the new moniker, that like Giants, like they're huge. They crush things, like whether they mean to or not. So it's kind of like you're crushing the old version of yourself and you're walking with your new one. And especially like because like even what we're doing right now, one thing that the pandemic has done, like even though we're disconnected, we can be talking to you guys in a different part of the country. And there's a lot of bands that are doing what you guys have been doing out of necessity to be like, you know, we need to figure something out, because if we're not able to do it how we usually do it, then what do we have now? And it sounds like it's been, I mean, the new song, I guess as a segue, it sounds great. And how's the reception been from fans? Are you keeping any of the old fans? Do you know, kind of through the journey?
I think so. I definitely think so. It's been the most well received thing I think we've ever done.
Awesome.
Simply because, it's I think it's finally kind of starting to reach people who are outside of your core fan base, which is I mean, everyone's core fan base is always friends, family, extended friends of friends that become fans, and it's a solid group, and that group never leaves. But it's finally, it's been reviewed. There's a couple of articles it's been featured on, and it's finally kind of, I mean, put it into perspective. I mean, I'm still fanboying over this so hard, but the other day, one of our main influences is Carnival. We absolutely, love that band. And then there was someone liked the post, or one of the posts, like the band page and the post, and I was like, I know that guy from somewhere. I was like, I know the face, and it was the guitar player from Carnival had liked the post and page, and I was just like, bro, bear in mind that like they're based in Australia, so that is we've never ever lived in a time where that has been possible, where it's been featured in like Prog magazine, for example, and then the actual one of the main influences of the band has seen it and been like, he might have liked it ironically, it might be like, I hate this band, I'm gonna like them, but I mean, I'm deep down I'm hoping that he was like, this sounds pretty cool, like. Yeah. I'm gonna follow them, and to answer your question the long way, it's I think it's definitely been well received, and I mean, obviously there's more songs on the way, and the collection of songs we have to release is definitely the most realized collection of songs we have, and definitely the most proud we've been of anything we've done before. So,
are you all anxious to get the other songs out, like at this point?
Oh yeah.
Totally, yeah. So like obviously we wrote them all like over a year ago now. It's like
a kind of old songs for us now.
So we've been, and then we recorded them in February. So it's been quite a long time. So it's nice to have one out. But yeah, now it's just like can't wait to release the others, especially because like I think they're all quite varied. Like it just so happened that they kind of, don't know, a bit of a journey, and
it's kind of more we're much more we're big fans of like the classic, I mean, we're going to say album, I mean it's
happening,
we've got an album's worth of songs
on the way,
that, and it's kind of, it's nice. Structured as a traditional, all of our favorite albums are kind of thematic almost, so they go through, they do definitely ebb and flow until the end. Okay. And it's not just like a lot of albums are kind of like, I don't want to say samey, but there's definitely one vibe, and they absolutely smash through that vibe like from like 10, 11, 12 tracks. Whereas this has definitely got a bit more variation. So every song doesn't sound like The Fact and Fiction.
Kind of different shades on each song.
Yeah, 100%.
Talk to us a little bit more about your influences. You did mention Carnival. We also have written down here the likes of Soundgarden, Radiohead, Deftones, Queen of the Stone Age, Rage Against the Machine, Metallica, The Contortionists, Big Wreck, and Tool. Great list, first of all.
Yeah.
What is it about these bands that you are kind of pulling from and what you love so much about?
Well, it's worth mentioning that list we all chose about 3 each.
Yeah.
Because I think that's one thing, is that everyone in the band has just a mutual love for most things, but we definitely kind of lean mostly towards more certain bands more than others. So, for example, me, Steff, and Jordan are huge like grunge fans in general. So it's like you say, your Soundgardens, like Alice in Chains. I suppose you could probably put Queens of the Stone Age in there as well. I mean, that kind of stonery, sound, more Sabbathy, darker sound in general. We're massive fans of that. Whereas Alex is definitely, the drummer, is 100% more of the modern flair. So the Contortionist and Tool, which are very drummery bands anyway, I suppose.
Yes, very.
But it's not like he doesn't.
Suits.
Yeah, exactly. So there's definitely songs like all the songs you will be able to hear shades of all of those bands. Like for me, I would say the next release is very much kind of Queens of the Stone Age inspired. Whereas the Fact and Fiction, I would say, was more on the lines of Carnival-y, Big Wrecky kind of side, Deftones-y kind of vibe. There's plenty to draw from, I guess.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And to your point, what you were saying about like a lot of your influences having a certain structure to the album, it is really refreshing to hear like that is like the mindset going into it, because we're definitely in a culture where singles are like really the big pushing factor for a band, which I mean they always have been. Like you hear a single like The Fact and Fiction, and be like, "Ooh, I want to check out the rest." But then like you listen to the rest, and you're like, "Wow, that was like the only good song on the album." but then like if you have that structure where you like should be listening to it like front to back, like without skipping in that order, that's really cool. And I know I love that. Todd, I know you love that too. So it just, again, like refreshing to hear like that is how it should be consumed, like front to back. And we're all about journeys. I'm sure our Hoppos, our fan base, are so sick of hearing about that, but like we love anything that's gonna be like, because I mean I'm a filmmaker, Todd's also in the industry, so like we're really big into thematicism and stories and whatnot. So if you can do that through your music and paint this picture, and you already have it like the thematicism there with like the name itself. And then I also wanted to touch upon, I love the artwork for the single with the moon being like painted onto the wall. I absolutely love it. Super, super cool. Can you talk a little bit about how the artwork plays in? Like, is that the single artwork? Is that going to be the full EP?
That's just the single artwork. We actually have the like artwork for the album itself already chosen, and we've had that since, I don't know, while. We recorded it probably.
But that kind of definitely the album for the, like I say, the artwork for the album definitely had a look that we wanted to translate throughout the single. Like every single is going to obviously have its own kind of unique artwork related to the song. And it's all going to follow a similar kind of style, which was always that kind of abstract, collagey, washed out kind of vibe. Like stuff like, I don't know, I think the main thing was timeless. Like there's a lot of like Pink Floyd artwork, which just always looks sick. Like it never very ages. Iconic, it's always just like, or like even the Audio Slave album cover which was done by the same guy who did the Pink Floyd stuff, like that kind of abstracty thing where it's not. I
actually didn't even know that. That's pretty cool.
That's cool. I didn't either.
Like the one where that's like the volcanic-y looking place with the flame.
Yes.
Yeah,
love that album.
Yeah, it's a great album. We didn't want it to. It was the same with the name actually. We didn't want it to overtly scream, "We are metal," or "We are this," or "We are that." We wanted it to kind of be as neutral as possible without being,
with a little hint of like,
without being boring, I think, and that's so hard to do.
Coming back to the artwork, I think the other thing was just like kind of having something that kind of makes you think a little bit when you look at it. So like it's not just like face value, like something that has a little bit more kind of depth to it. I think that's kind of the same like from a music point of view. Like we've always kind of wanted to
be more subtle.
Be a bit more subtle and kind of almost like you can draw your own interpretation from it. So I think that's something as well that we kind of wanted to bring into the artwork as well.
The first thing it made me think of was, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Stanley Kubrick conspiracy theory that he was the one that filmed the lunar landing and The Shining was his way of telling everyone that like he did it. So I was like, oh, cool. This feels like Kubrick to me. So it always makes me really excited.
Yeah, totally. And I think that kind of pulls into the song as well, like the fact and fiction of like being like, I don't know, like there's kind of more nuance to things than people tend to kind of jump into. And like, yeah, there's fact and fiction, there's fiction and fact, and it kind of goes both ways. So yeah, especially like with stuff like that, like you say, you can definitely draw kind of draw parallels between the two.
And that's the beauty of art. Everyone has their own interpretation, whether, you know, it was intentional or not, but you draw from your own experiences and whatever scope you're looking at. And I think also the video, like it's really hard like to have a performance piece, but like be like entertaining because like there's so many performance pieces. But I love what you guys did with the video. Like it's so simplistic, but it was just very like everything was like really well shot. And I love how empty the space felt because I know, and I guess we can kind of segue into like the lyricism. Like this was all written and recorded during isolation and lockdown. So I don't know, was that like I tend to do this, like probably think too much into it, but like, was that an intention while doing the video? And then get into the lyrics a little bit for us, if you would.
Yeah, I mean, like from the video point of view, we had that made by or helped along, filmed by our friend back up in Newcastle at the Garage Studios, Lee, who is an absolute legend. And yeah, he had quite a clear vision, I guess, on what he wanted. So kind of with the lighter white room and then obviously the dark shots, kind of the contrast between the two, kind of pulling the song in that sense. But yeah, I think we're quite lucky, I guess, with the location kind of fitting into that, but also just like I say, like with Lee on board, like he's awesome skills for videography. So he really pulled that together for sure.
Mm-hmm. Lyrically, it's kind of about
it was, so we kind of wrote, it was actually probably one of the first songs that we wrote off the album, I think maybe the second one.
Second or third,
yeah, so it was quite like early on in the,
it's quite like amongst everything when everything was kind of at its peak
lockdown. Yeah. So yeah, it was totally absolutely. It was very much inspired by that. And I think it was kind of just our perspective, like being self-employed musicians and kind of obviously like from the arts industry, just kind of seeing everything going along. Yeah. And it was kind of looking at that. And then obviously like the parallels of it, I think what was quite interesting about lockdown as a whole is just kind of how it's affected people so differently, in the sense that like some people have had a jolly old time and like been on furlough. I don't know, I guess you guys had something similar to like furlough, basically just like your employer, your employer would like give you money even though you went to work, like from the government essentially.
That was 100% me.
I am one of the lucky ones, so I can't say I had a bad time, but I was working in news at the time, so I certainly saw things of how terrible it affected others, so I at least could sympathize very much so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, from our point of view, it definitely wasn't like we weren't the worst affected, but I guess it was just, it was, like you say, like interesting kind of sitting back and watching it all kind of play out, I suppose.
There was certain politicians in this country that kind of didn't really take anything seriously as well. So it was kind of like
it was all the face, wasn't it?
the whole one of the lyrics is literally one rule for us, one rule for you. And it kind of was a lot of that going on where it was kind of like, well, why should I care if you don't care? And it's like that kind of thing, just petty kind of feelings, I guess. But when you're in the heat of, or when you're in the peak of isolation, you kind of are like, well, hang on, like, why am I here, like, indoors doing this when you're just
couldn't give a shit,
totally just doing whatever you want. So yeah,
it's a very real point. Seriously, I mean, that I feel like that happened in the U.S. as well, because there's certainly people who got together for parties. And while you're on your TV and you're like, okay, I'm sorry. Did I get the wrong message to stay inside?
Yeah, totally. But then from the other side of things, I was kind of like, so I remember specifically the time as well, like there was like loads of, like on all of the news and on all of the papers, it was like about like photos of like beaches being full and them like basically like shaming people for going outside. But then at the same time, like these politicians were just doing whatever they wanted and like no one was actually like holding them up to it. And it's like, hold on, why are like, it was just like totally like
standards of.
Totally double standards, totally. And it's just kind of like either like you don't care or
either
we do care.
Practice what you preach or just let everyone get on with their lives kind of thing. But yeah, sure. that is lyrically pretty much what the song's about, albeit maybe subtly. And there's definitely, it's not just what the song's about. It's definitely more to do with kind of how close, like, again, like the parallels between a more dystopian kind of reality to what we actually live in. Like how close are we to being drawing parallels from the two? Like Steff said, like the fact in fiction, the fiction in fact, the fact that you could read, a dystopian novel and be like, actually, that's quite similar to what we're living in now. Like when you watch like Black Mirror on Netflix, I don't know whether you're aware of that, but you watch it and you're like, what? Like that, we're not far off from that. Like that could happen or something like that. You know what I mean?
Is this a documentary? What's going on?
Yeah.
That was the joke, wasn't it? That everyone was like, 2020 is the next Black Mirror episode.
Yeah. Just the real life is Black Mirror now.
Yeah.
Just watching one big simulated live feed. That's what's.
Yeah.
Definitely.
To give us a glimpse into the rest of the songs, are they just as diverse as well on topics?
I would say so. I mean, obviously they were all kind of written throughout lockdown, so that's definitely like a theme throughout, and just kind of, I think, for the most part, they're all quite, I don't know. I don't want to say apocalyptic, but maybe that says a lot about.
I mean, for the way because obviously I don't actually know, because I don't write the lyrics. I am I am but an interpreter. But sometimes, I definitely get the vibe that a lot of it is just human problems, like problems that like we can literally all relate to, albeit subtly. Like I say, you can draw your own conclusions from them. But the idea that like it kind of I wanted to really have something where it reminded me of the music I used to listen to get me through like a shit week, or to get me through like something like a bad time. Like I wouldn't necessarily say I wouldn't necessarily say it's something you listen to. Our music, at least, is something you maybe listen to when you're like really, really, really happy. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but it definitely gets you either pumped up or it's something to listen to kind of catharsize some kind of
bad shit,
some kind of trouble as you're going through or something like that. Yeah.
I mean, I can see both going on because for me, I honestly love the grooves that you guys capture in the songs. Like that gets me pumped anytime. So like I definitely feel some energy from it, but also with the lyrical content and the theme, I certainly feel like the emotional part of it as well. I also want to say, Steff, when you hit that high note, it's perfect. Like a high note I will never reach in my life, but that really stands out to me on the track.
Thank
I don't know
you.
where I'm going with this, but I just want to get that out there as a compliment.
No, that's cool.
Yeah.
I think
did she sound like you imagined her to?
I mean, coming off of listening to the old stuff, I was just like, I was impressed with your progression since then.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That is always really cool, especially like because you guys have been like playing music together for so long since you were teenagers. So like you're not only growing as musicians, but as friends, and you know, it's really cool to see like that type of progression. And it's also like when you're talking about when you like want to listen to something like Giant Walker, like what does that invoke? And so many times, like as of late, been talking to we're really big new metal fans here on BREWTAL, and there's like a really big resurgence going on, and like everyone has like the same like thought process essentially, is like this is something that was comforting to me, and now like this is the type of music that I want to make. So it's a really cool like artistic cycle to be like, cool, this is something I really like. So like you guys like Soundgarden and Alice in Chains, and like now you're just putting your own flair and spin on it, so that 30 years from now, someone's going to be like, oh, well, I want to sound like Giant Walker. And it just kind of starts over again.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I guess like these types of thoughts, especially like having way too much time to think about it in lockdown, it's like time's just such a weird concept. We always say like it's a flat circle here. And actually we stole that from a band 100%, but shout out Carcosa. But it is like everything kind of comes back around, whether it be art, whether it be like just a certain type of thinking, fashion. I mean, there's like a big like 90s resurgence. It's like every like 30 years or so, you see like the people that were influenced becoming the influencers. So I guess
I think people forget as well, that people forget that I think, I mean, I'm a firm believer that there's not much that is completely invented. Like, I think it's very, very hard to just come up with something that no one has heard before. I mean, even
especially in like today.
Yeah, I mean, the people obviously talk about the 70s as just a general decade for being a very unique decade where like there's loads of new stuff just popping all over the place. But then at the same time, like, I mean, Sabbath, I mean, they're pretty much, you know, responsible for creating heavy metal, basically. Just the overall sound of it. But I mean, even then, I mean, they said they just tried to recreate the sound in the music from like old horror films. Mm-hmm. And if you go back and listen to like, if you listen to Black Sabbath by Black Sabbath, just that menacing like do do do, like that really gnarly kind of note, it's like that's literally straight out of like a really old horror film. So as original as Black Sabbath that's still influenced by old horror and like and satanic kind of vibes. And it's I don't know where I'm going with it really, but I think it's like you say, like everyone's influenced by something, and it doesn't mean that they sound like a carbon copy of whatever they're influenced by. It's just that you've literally been influenced by it. It's just been like, like it could be a production thing. Like all the new metal stuff has a very, very particular kind of production because, well, the same like kind of producers and engineers worked on all of it. So I guess it makes sense. So maybe that's what you go for. Maybe it's that's the sound. That's the thing. It's the snare sound in that one album that I'm in love with.
Metallica.
Clang, clang. Yeah, Saint Anger. But yeah,
it's cool too because like bringing up Sabbath and being so influential, not just for the metal community but music in general, and kind of circling back to how you guys are recording now remotely, and it's some of your best work, and you're very proud of it. Sabbath, like Tony Iommi lost his fingers in a factory, so like he had to tune down because he couldn't play it. So like out of necessity, like that's how they created their sound. So like it would be way different if Tony had those two fingers, the tips of them, and we might not have the same types of music that we have today. So it's just interesting again, like you're out of necessity and your influences. So in this case, COVID has made it an interesting time to get things done, and it's come like some of the best art, like music, movies, books, like anything like that, because people have had time. And it's like, well, what else like can we do? Like, let's create something. And now we get like a flood of all this amazing stuff.
I feel like we've been spoiled this year.
Yeah.
Well, time and limitations, I guess.
Yeah.
Once again, proving that limitations just breed creativity. I mean, in the right people, I guess. Like you say, Tony Iommi cuts his fingers off. It's like, he could have easily just been like, well, guitar's not for me, is it really? But instead he was like, I'm going to invent a genre, and so yeah, it definitely is. For even just forcing limitations on you is a good way of just getting something out, I guess. It was just unfortunate that it was COVID for us, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm trying to, kind of segue into the future, if you will. Talk to us a little bit about any plans y'all might have, especially if hopefully, fingers crossed, you guys might be able to tour on this new music. Is there anything you guys have your sights on in the near future, or?
Yeah, I mean, everything is still a little bit up in the air, I guess, with today. But we've got kind of the next few singles panned out, and a couple of big ones kind of starting to come in for like next year, but nothing's like 100%. Nothing's
concrete, I suppose.
Concrete, yeah.
But yeah, I think the main priority right now is just to get more music out there, because like you say, we have stuff under zero, but it's kind of not really the point. We wanted it to be a bit of a fresh start, almost like a fresh band, and just be like, okay, this is the first song we've got. So we, in theory, we only have one song. So it's kind of like, we just want to get some more stuff out there so that people can kind of have some level of rotation between them. And then, definitely look towards gigging, because I mean, that's been a minute since.
That's half the reason y'all are into it, is just to play live.
This is it, man.
Literally. Yeah, that's always kind of been our kind of main driver. So yeah, it's been a bit of a mad couple of years. It's literally coming up like we're a month away from 2 years since our last gig. So that's
just crazy.
Yeah, we're looking forward to bands like yourself playing live, because I just know like that's what you're yearning for.
Oh yeah.
I can't think of anything else, but this is the part where we're like, tell the people, let them know how to find y'all, where to locate your music, and how to get in touch.
Yeah, so pretty much everything is on our website, which is giantwalker.co.uk. But you can find us on Facebook, on Instagram, all streaming sites, so Spotify, it's on YouTube. And if you just type in Giant Walker, then we will be there.
We'll be the first one there, which wasn't the case with the old band name. We would have been many, many, many pages down. So yeah.
Google page 10. But now,
literally.
Page 0, no more.
Yeah.
Well, seriously, thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your evening, sort of afternoon for us. We really appreciate it, and we always look forward to these bands. For us personally, we're mostly covering metal, but we love a broad spectrum of so many genres, and I don't even like to talk about genres because we always get it wrong. But we really appreciate your time, and I think you guys really do have something special with your sound, because to me, you sound very unique as opposed to other bands I've heard and listened to, and I think that is a very strong suit to follow. So thank you.
It's much appreciated.
Thanks so much. Yeah, much appreciated, and thanks so much for having us as well. It's been good.